Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. And also, I definitely need to shave. It's getting to that point where it's just neck beard status right now. It's just, been focused on other things, one of which I got 99 in fire making and OSRS today. It's not that hard to do 99 fire making, but I did it. And on my last set of boxes, I got the Phoenix. So I'm riding a little bit of a high. That just happened about half an hour to like an hour ago or something like that. So I'm feeling pretty good. But the last week has been it's been a time. I probably need to make some standalone videos about some of the major topics. Most importantly is the plugin discourse that is currently going on. I'm letting you know now at the start of the video, that's going to get its own video. So asking about it here for next week just doesn't serve any purpose. You are just going to get a dedicated video with me sharing my thoughts. TLDR, against terms of service, it could always have happened. It did happen, and honestly, it's not going to matter because people are just going to find a replacement anyway. It'll kind of just blow over once everyone gets over the initial shock of losing that particular thing. There is also one other topic. I'm not going to get too much into it right now, but I'm sure it's going to come up in next week's video. So that one I'm not making a standalone video on. I will just wait because that one I will take basically as it's required to address. But with that, I have a Q&A to get to because I've got to play Grounded 2 with a few other people. I didn't play the first one, but I watched a bunch of it, and it was really cool. So looking forward to taking my day off, night off, actually recording this Saturday night instead of Sunday. Taking a little bit of time for that. So let's get into the Q&A. Do I have Magic Spoon this week? I don't know if I'm doing a Magic Spoon ad on this video this week. If there's an ad for it after this, thanks to them for sponsoring. I just haven't checked to see if I need to do it before recording this. Probably should have. Irresponsible of me. But either there will be or there won't be. Otherwise, thanks to those people over on Patreon who support. I don't have anything monetarily locked. You don't have to. Just watching my videos is more than enough. I don't pay gate anything, and I don't want to change that. I have no plans on changing that. So yeah, anyone who's over there, just thanks, because you have no obligation to be over there. Just enjoy the weekly Q&A, enjoy the other content I put out, and that's more than enough for me. But with that, let's get on to either a Magic Spoon and then the Q&A, a Magic Spoon ad and then the Q&A, or just on to the Q&A. Let's find out. Before we get started, the sponsor for this video is Magic Spoon. Yeah, many of you are used to this ad read on my channel, but it's a pleasure every month. They make high-protein cereal and snack products that anyone can enjoy for almost any diet. I get a box every month and use it to shake up my daily eating because sometimes I just eat the same thing way too much. They most recently sent me a smorgasbord of cereal, treat bars, and granola. I'll just reach for any of them throughout the day, really, whenever I get snacky, as an option that's just better for my dietary needs. If you'd like to try Magic Spoon while also supporting the channel, then click the link below to get some today. Build your own custom box of products with tons of available flavors to match whatever you want. Best of all, use my link and discount code Mr. Happy to get $5 off of your box. You can also buy it at your local grocery store or even on Amazon. And if you don't like it, Magic Spoon has a 100% happiness guarantee. Let them know and they'll refund you, no questions asked. So click the link below or scan the QR code on the screen and use code Mr. Happy to get $5 off, or go to magicspoon.com/Mr. Happy to save $5 on your order. It even works in Canada and the UK. Thanks again to Magic Spoon for sponsoring, and now back to the video. Man, I can already see there's no hello. It's the very first thing I see. Hashtag Monday with Mr. Happy. Yeah, I want to give this person some credit. Not only is there no hello, it's one of the few times the first question is actually the first comment. Most of the time, the first comment is not a question. In fact, the next 3 or 4 are not questions. So it's rare, which means that this is probably an important one for me to read. But they didn't say hello. I can forgive it, just because it's a rare occurrence. What is the one side quest that isn't required in a game's main story that's always stuck with you? This could be Final Fantasy XIV related or any game. One of my favorite quests in 14 is the Margaret custom deliveries. Hearing how these people find passion in their own way without the weight of creating the exodus from their home. Oh wow, there's a lot more text here. It's also hijacked of its purpose last second. Isn't it? It's Margaret, isn't it? I'm saying Margaret here because it's spelled that way. But I feel like there's another A in there. And the others were scared of their work being a failure almost as much as the end of the world. Not eating, sleeping, just sobbing randomly, being manic. Yeah, I actually really like that one. I did that one way after it came out, and I could see why it was really highly rated. You put so much passion into something, it doesn't go right. So worst case, what happens doesn't matter. And then Labyrinthos, yeah. And also one of those questions, Alphino being a based favorite character in 14. Mine is Vreetra, but also up there with Elidibus. I like them too. It helps that they're not Elidibus, but Estinian really helps with Alphino, and so when he becomes kind of a vessel, Estinian really does allow characters around him to grow, both throughout Heavensward and when we eventually get to Vreetra. It allows Vreetra to actually kind of remember that he's a dragon and that that they're pretty strong, As for a favorite side quest, it's funny, one that's recent, but I don't think I could say of all time, is the Romeo and Juliet quest from OSRS, because it just, the way it ends, I'm not going to spoil it, but the way it ends really surprised me. I just was ill prepared for it, so it was really funny to me. But a side quest, not a side quest, but very specifically a twist. So no, you know what? I don't think I want to use that. There's a story twist in a game that when I was like 6-7 years old, genuinely shocked me to the point where I still remember how I felt about it to this day. But that's not a side quest. So let's go to a side quest. Okay, I do have an answer. It's Final Fantasy themed, and Final Fantasy VI is a game full of secret lore bits that you can only occur when you actually have the correct party members in your party at the correct time. And among them, one of my favorite characters, like I mentioned last week, was Shadow. And even though it's not technically a side quest, the way you uncover his background with the dream sequences is something that is part of the reason why he was one of my favorite characters, because he's very mysterious and you really have to go out of your way or get really lucky in like a normal playthrough to get most of that information. That's something that's not crucial to the main story of Final Fantasy VI, but has always stuck with me so much so that it's propelled, I'd say, a relatively simple character on the surface to be a character that I really lift up and enjoy, even if you don't really get to experience them all that much. There are lots of games where a character not being there a ton is a means for me to grow to like the character more, because it means the time that they're actually on the screen is usually a bit more impactful and it's a bit more special. When you have that character you haven't seen in ages come on in and, save the world or something. Like, I think in Dawn Trail of Estinian and Vreetra riding in, towards the later sequences when you're dealing with Zoral Ja. I mean, that's a huge thing. I wish it didn't feel like it was obvious it was coming, and it would have been better. But it's still like one of those highlight moments where the character who, you don't really know what they're doing at the time shows up and is just a complete monster. So I think I'm going to go with that Shadow bit, though. Not really a side quest because there's no reward for it, but it completes the character and their story and their character arc to the point where I consider it a side quest. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Mr. I like this dash, by the way. The hashtag and then the dash. The other person who didn't say hello did it, but I like it here, too. I don't know. I like it. Hello, Mr. Happy. I have two related questions. Hello, and I have hopefully two related answers. One, why can I not queue into multiple roulettes at once? I'm going to go ahead and say spaghetti code. I don't know the actual answer. I just assume that's the answer, so I'll say that. Two, with the change of some roulettes not including content that you have not beat for the first time, why can't Mentor Roulette just become a roulette of everything of content you have already completed? With everything being required, I've not been able to do Mentor Roulette for a while, but love to go into. The idea is that, and okay, let me preface this. They have not stated this. This is my interpretation of why. If you are a mentor, the idea is that you are assisting others with something that you have already done. You are helping them in order to get them the clear. So if you haven't done it before, then it doesn't make sense to be able to get it. Now, that's not your question. Your question is, why can't you do the roulette without completing everything? And to that, I think it's to show that you actually go out into the game and do all of these things, even if it's something old that you just do that's unsynced from before. I think they want you to have a degree of mastery over everything that can be in the mental roulette, or at least show that you're that invested in the game that you are keeping up with it, and that makes you a more reputable mentor. The problem is that theory of why they would do it that way only works when the mentor system as a whole is treated in that same regard. And unfortunately, while there are absolutely mentors out there who do the job, who try to help new players, there is a much wider number of people who just do it for the rewards and are not helpful, are honestly sometimes worse players than the actual sprouts they're helping, or are more toxic than the sprouts that they're helping. And so it's one of those things that makes sense when I say it like that, but in the essence of how we actually experience it in 14, what you've suggested would be probably the better thing to do overall. I just don't think it's ever going to go that way. Okay, before I answer... Wow, this question also has a ton of text. Before I answer this question, somebody wrote out a summoner rework. And I think for obvious reasons, I'm not going to include that in the video. It's a lot. If you want to see what they wrote, go to last week's video and you'll find it. Trust me, you can't miss it. So thank you for writing all that. I hope you posted that on the forums. So just because that seems like the more appropriate location if you can stomach being there in any capacity. But I don't think this is the place for me to go over your rework, critique it. I don't think that that's the back and forth we're going to be having here for this Q&A. Okay. Yo, this dash, they're all different people, and this has just become a normal thing. I don't know how, do you guys all organize this? Every time there's like a mass like change in format, like when the hashtag for Mondays with Mr. Happy, I didn't do that. Other people started doing that first, and then I just started going along with it. This whole dash hello, dash start question thing, I'm down for it. It's just, you know, I don't know where it came from. It's 3 times already. I wanted to hear more. Oh, hello. Hello. First time asker with a big wall of text. Yes, it is. This isn't all of it. I wanted to hear more of your thoughts on leveling after max level that someone asked last week. I myself really love the leveling experience. I have to admit, I think 14 is one of the weakest. It goes by pretty fast. The milestones for most of the jobs don't feel that impactful outside of maybe hitting the point where you have most of your rotations or tanks getting their crazy good mitt skills. So by the time I hit 100 or whatever the max level is at the time, I still wish there was more. And I'll say I could level other jobs, but really don't interest me that much. I wish I could just stick to my main jobs to continue to gain progress and level. That's why I think a prestige system could be interesting, like resetting yourself back to 1 and going back up to max level again. Getting an achievement title mount when you do, and possibly a new currency to spend on cosmetics. Yeah, I mean, listen, there's no argument against doing a system like that, because it's entirely arbitrary, right? Setting yourself back to level 1 and then doing the level grind again. That is, how do I put this? There's no harm in that, in putting rewards behind doing something like that. I do think that you would need a new game plus style flag for it, meaning that if you wanted to leave that second level and go to doing things at level 100 again, that you could. I think the idea of hard committing to that, like, oh, you're going to reset to level 1, you won't be able to do any level 100 content, that to me doesn't seem like a good idea. So it's really more like a, you know, your level will temporarily be reset if you wish to turn this off. Go May. The problem is, as soon as you start adding layers like that on, it's already a system update for something that is not going to be widely adopted. But you also have to come up with all the UI elements and systems that come with supporting it, and that's the problem with the system as a whole. So it's one of those things that on the surface, fundamentally, you can actually justify why you could do that to artificially extend people's playtime, add a grind for people to do, and in an MMO, I think that's something that quite a few people, at least people of my generation, are perfectly okay with being put in front of them. But when you think about the practicality of resources used for something like that, it becomes harder to justify. So it would have to be something like an intern does on their own time. And we have gotten great features like that. Mahjong and most of the A Realm Reborn rework did come from the development team working outside of their working hours in order to make something like that happen. Without being asked as like by Yoshi P as something that they should be doing, or assigned to do something like that. That he gave all the credit entirely to the people who on their own time decided this was something Final Fantasy XIV needed. So it would have to be something like that, in my opinion, if you would even hope to see it. And even then, there's so many moving parts that it's not like one person could make that whole thing happen. There's so many different aspects that need to intertwine with each other. Ease and test this. Open world monster grind. It feels nice to have things to do outside of endgame grinds. One suggestion I doubt would happen would be sort of harder open world challenge where you enable your prestige, taking some inspiration from Eureka Bozia, where you can only level killing mobs. It's so funny you mentioned this. I considered doing a challenge. How long would it take to level to max level in Final Fantasy XIV off just overworld mob kills? And you know why? Because I've been playing OSRS. And so I was like, they do weird shit all the time. And Wrath obviously has been doing his solo thing. I haven't really watched much of it, but it just goes to show the ingenuity of, you know, of just trying absurd challenges and how fun it can be. I have considered. Now, obviously they wouldn't be harder, but if I make it so that I have to be fighting monsters a certain level over me in order to get the ideal EXP, and I have to calculate out the speed at which I actually get, then it starts to change things up a little bit. Yeah, the thing is, I have no way of saying, hey, we shouldn't do these things. It's a matter of, is it a good allocation of resources specifically to dedicate this much to the leveling experience, where you can only level mobs if they are tougher to boot, giving some more reason to party up. Yeah, I mean, like, they would, then again, they'd have to develop a system, because the way I'm imagining in my head is they just basically tune the amount of damage that you take to be a lot more punishing when you do it, just for the sake of it, because the mobs themselves are not gonna, like, they're just gonna auto you and either do tank busters or, you know, do whatever. I don't even know, you know, there's like a lot that goes into it. But it's not like I could present with you like, no, that's terrible idea. That would be so fucking stupid. No, it's just like, do I have a good rebuttal? No. But is it something that the game needs and that should be present? I just don't think it is. I think the open world leveling, I've made a lot of suggestions with that. I think fates really need to be looked at, overhauled, go back, really work on them, and support them better from the early levels. But this is just tough for me to really get behind, because I don't think it does things that are better for the game. It just does something that some people may utilize or do, but doesn't effectively match everything else that the game does or what the kind of core aspects of playing the game represent. So it's almost something like you'd have to do yourself. And while you could, I just can't come up with a reason why. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Oops, submitted another one. Hope that's okay. No hello. I just realized. You know what? Thoughts of another while watching the rest of the video. When do you think we're gonna get a grown Ascian Alpha? No, I don't know. I honestly, I don't think that it's ever gonna happen. So the big thing is the whole time bubble theory, that most of the game takes place within a set period of time, and that time bubble just gradually expands without actually progressing time that much. We definitely have some points in time, and I think Dawn Trail, us taking the boat to Tuliolal, is probably one of those. I don't know if we have an official confirmation of how much that time slot has been extended, but we know that, like, I think going to Kugane took a month. And then I think also we were officially told 2.5 to 3.0 also there's a month time skip there. But you need a big time skip for them to grow. So either more time shenanigans where they get sent into another dimension and actually hit their growth spurts, or like a genuine time skip in the game. And I don't know if that's going to happen. I think you're more likely to find more timey-wimey shenanigans like Shadowbringers, and that's what brings it up. I just don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I also think we're past the point where Alvino and Alice need to be so in the forefront that that's an event that occurs. Like, they're gonna be there. Like, obviously they're gonna be part of the story, and, you know, whether in bits and pieces or front and center at some point. I just don't know that we're gonna hit a point that necessitates that. And I honestly, I don't think they'll ever grow up. Or if they do, it's gonna be because of something we never saw coming. And so it's impossible to predict. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. C. I clicked show more, and then nothing changed. I don't think it even added the smiley face at the end. Hi, Haps. Hi. Hope your day is going well. Thanks. You too. With 7.4 and 7.5 MSQ being about the build up to 8.0, do you think we'll face big threats enough to warrant a trial? I think they're more likely to get a small trial. No, they're gonna give us trials that are just part of the MSQ for 7.4 and 7.5. A trial series that's just 2 isn't a series. It's just a pair. it's not enough there. I do think that we are going to get a Hildebrand trial also, but that's not good. You know what? I'm not convinced anymore that Hildebrand trial won't have something higher difficulty. They keep saying how they want, you know, like more people to want to do more content. And if they stick a trial behind Hildebrand that has like a quantum style system, I don't think anything that crazy. You never know. That statement leaves a lot of interpretation. It's not the place I think it'll happen, but I think we'll probably get another Gilgamesh trial, or at least another trial at all, you know, for fun trial for Hildebrand. They should really give it like minions or something. Like, I think that worked really well for some of the older Hildebrand ones, and then they didn't do that for the Stormblood one, so it became a big like chokehold, and then they also didn't do it for Asura, so that was another big chokehold. So yeah, I don't know, but no, they're definitely gonna be part of the MSQ. They're not gonna make a whole separate series for the last couple of them. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey Haps, hi, how you doing? I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. 7.3 spoilers in this question. Okay. I'm not even going to spoiler. It's the way Dawn Trail story, we just don't care about doing spoilers. It's been like 2.5 weeks. We're good. After it's revealed that Calyx's ambitions had some level of Ascian influence upon the living memory being semi-restored, I started to notice that a lot of buildings in living memory closely resemble those of that Tempest with a golden trim. I think this is the sign that remaining Ascians are still attempting to restore the old world and the Ascians. Do you think the goals of this new band could differ entirely from the likes of Emmett's Self-Collaborate? Yeah, no, I think that this... It's a pretty simple thing that I think is happening. I think that, keep in mind that all the remaining Ascians are restored souls, effectively. They're still sundered, but, you know, they've been given the memory crystal. It's a question of which ones were actually given a memory crystal and restored properly before, you know, basically that entire thing just became not a thing anymore with all the unsundereds being dead. I think it's an ideological difference between what the unsundered wanted and what whoever this remaining Ascian actually wants. Because the ideas are, and this is, everyone has noticed this, living memory is very, very similar in prospects and in story tempo and themes to the old world, to the world that the Ascians, that the ancients were actually a part of and were trying to restore from the unsundered. However, this entire world is about effectively preserving life indefinitely. So, I don't think there's going to be much of a, the goals are going to be overlapped. I think it's two different ways of approaching the same problem, where one group wants to completely bring back everything that ever was. One group wants to preserve everything that is forever. They're like scarred by the thought of what they lost, and now they have this like deep-seated fear of ever losing it again. And so it could have been at some point that both of these ideas were running in tandem, where the Unsundered had a focus on, of course, bringing back the old world, but that some people on the out of the 13 would have I guess with 14 with the Lotobus, but out of the Ascians, they would have been responsible for making sure they never lost it again. But somewhere along the line, they became more obsessed with just preserving life as a whole, but at the cost of anything else. It's a question of how much they actually care about the lives they're preserving. Because here's the thing, living memory kind of just works against what the Ascians wanted, the unsundered ones, because those people aren't technically important to them. You know what I mean? They shouldn't be in any way important to the previous to the previous unsundered. So it's just really hard to say. But I think that it is a group that's more obsessed with preserving the future. I also can't help but feel like Ultima is somehow attached to all of this. Right now, thematically, it doesn't make sense, especially because Ultima as a character, we've only dealt with as a single boss in, an Orbone Monastery, and then had sprinkles of their lore and understanding of the way that the Orosites work elsewhere in the game. But Ultima seems like the slam dunk big bad to want to deal with. It's just a question of how they're going to be written and done, because that's tough. I mean, it's not an easy thing to follow it up. And, I don't know how they'll do it. Hashtag Monday with Mr. Happy. Hey, Haps. Hi. I hope you're having a nice weekend. Yeah, like I said, listen, the 99 fire making was pretty good, I gotta say. That worked out well for me. I've been a Paladin main since 7.0, fighting through the first and second tier of Savage. I've done a few ultimates as well as Pally. Done a few ultimates as well as Pally. You said you're a Paladin main. Do you mean on Pally? Or do you mean... I'm not sure. I take a decent amount of pride in my knowledge of it, but knowing one thing I can never understand, what does Bulwark actually do? The scripture says blocks incoming attacks for 10 seconds. It doesn't explain much at all. I've looked at forums and wikis and heard different explanations, but after doing it, how does he much of an advantage? Does it reduce damage taken like Rampart? Yeah, so whenever you get the pop-up on screen that says blocked minus... I think they made it a flat 20%? Did they? So blocking used to be a little more complicated. There used to be block strength, and then there used to be like block frequency. And different shields had different block strengths and block frequencies. So you could have like a Hoplon that would block more often, but wouldn't block for as much damage. And then you had a shield that would have a lower block rate, but would block more damage if it ever did. I think they flattened all that out, and I think it's like 20 or I think it's 20% now for blocks. But effectively, it just makes you block. Honestly, it's pretty much identical to that same amount of damage mitigation being given anywhere else. The big thing that I don't know as a non-tank is how blocking factors into damage calculation. Like, does it just stack with Rampart multiplicatively and all the other things that you can use, like damage mitigations? Does it just stack with them multiplicatively? Does it reduce the base damage before things like Rampart kick in? That's the part I don't know. I'm sure the comment section of this will have a tank who's far more knowledgeable in that than I am. But effectively, it's damage reduction. Like, anytime you literally see the words, you know, attack that is block and then minus 20% next to an attack, that means you blocked it. And that's what Bulwark does. It triggers that block effect. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Haps. Hi, and hope you had a great weekend. I did. After watching the last Q&A, I was pleased when you talked about Hope from 13, so I'll say my hot take now. 13 is my favorite mainline entry. I actually know a lot of people whose 13 is their favorite entry. I don't agree, but, you know, that's what an opinion is for. Great characters, sensible growth, and a combat system that's enjoyable and engaging. So the question is this week, what's your opinion on 13 and the trilogy as a whole? What are some likes, dislikes, maybe some places you'd like to see crossovers into 14? Well, we have had a Final Fantasy 13. For Lightning Returns, we had a crossover. They haven't done it because all that stuff is in the cash shop now, so they don't run the events once it's in the cash shop. But 13 is a game that I kind of like jumped on the hate train right when it came out and didn't really give it a chance. Years later, I played it and I wasn't a huge fan. And then a few more years later, I played it and I realized that it was just a matter of being really meh, like middle of the road. Like, I don't really like it that much, but I don't really hate it that much either, where I can get behind some of the systems. I understand the systems enough to be able to feel like I'm actively engaging with the system, and it's not LOL just auto battle. I understand the value of manual commands a lot. I understand ATB resetting based on the amount of time that's taken place between the last time that you change the paradigm and the next time. Like, that affects like instant ATB resets. But there's like just some fundamental things. We've also gotten into an age where media supporting story has become so much more common that it's hard for me to criticize. Like, what am I going to criticize 13 for the way that its lore backs up its story, the way it's told in game, when I play games like 14 that release like 300-page lore books that explain things and like stories that are on the lodestone and that's, I'm using 14 because it's, you know, applicable. It's easy to understand. It's easy to compare. But there's plenty of media that does that now. So it's kind of like retroactively maybe not dislike that part nearly as much. But at its core, things like the party leader dying, things like the absolutely the Crystarium system and the way it hard gates you at certain points and how kind of unengaging it is to progress it. Like, I'd rather just level up like normal than have a Crystarium, because yeah, you can choose which roles you start moving points in, but you're just moving along a line. It's not interesting or engaging. And then 13 too, most everything is better in my opinion, except that the Crystarium is even weirder because it has this weird min-max situation depending on like what paradigm you are trying to level. Like, changing the amount of stats you get per level up. It's really min-maxy thing, but it really bothers me that it's even designed that way in the first place, and you can actually be weaker just because of the order you decided to level things up. So yeah, 13 is, I just consider it like very middle of the pack for me. It's right there with the other middle of the pack. To me, Final Fantasy VII on PlayStation 1 is very middle of the pack. Final Fantasy VIII, just under that, but still very middle of the pack. It's very much in that I don't love it, but I don't hate it category. 13.2 I like a little bit more. And Lightning Returns, I love the combat, but everything else is some of the worst Final Fantasy, like storytelling, exploration, character progression, some amazing boss fights, just wrapped in a game that is just not great. It's kind of like playing through Kingdom Hearts 3 and hating and like being really disappointed by all the bosses, but you're like, but hey, Remind's got the cool things. It's kind of like that in Lightning Returns, except that it's all baked into the base game. 13.2 also has a huge issue with the added DLCs and like how they ended the base game story to be continued. What? I didn't even know back then it was a DLC. Is it a third game? And then it was both, and I was like, oh. Yeah, there's a lot for me to dislike there, but over time, other than with Lightning Returns, I have grown to be more understanding and able to enjoy those games more than I did when I just kind of hopped on the hate train when it first came out. This isn't Final Fantasy. I just want a turn-based game. Yeah, that's so far in my past. I just don't want to go back to being that person. Hashtag happy with Mr. Happy because Sly will be very, very happy. Nice. Hi. I can hear Sophie playing Overwatch on the other room. Hope you have a happy day. There's not a happy here, but I'm happy. In the past dungeon mob poll, certain enemies were buffing the rest of the mob, trying to handicap the party by polymorphing animation. Certain mobs targeting more squishy party members or attacking from the sidelines. Yeah, we had this even as recently as Shadowbringers. So, I mean, I think there's I think there is one in Endwalker that does that. I think that by bringing at least those elements in dungeon polls, AoE's having more detrimental effects, at least bring the minimum level of flavor. The biggest problem with, quote, minimum level of flavor, it's so bare bottom that it only mildly impresses a single time before it eventually becomes just make sure that you're standing in the group and it'll get AoE'd all the same. And two, did I stay with A or 1 first? 2 and B, whatever. Dungeons are really meant to be like dungeons, like Final Fantasy XIV dungeons. They're really meant to be that whole run through, get it done, and a lot of people, I know it sounds weird, but trust me, because I've seen so many people speak up against me whenever I try to talk bad about dungeons, but a lot of people really do want them to be that simple. I don't, which is why I like the idea of things like Variant and Criterion and other 4-player contents that expand upon the dungeon system and make them a little more engaging, at least in some capacities. But a lot of people really just want them to be face roll. So the problem is that if they do this, it still needs to be just once in a while and very non-egregious, because otherwise people complain, man. People complain about everything. People complain about the CEs in both Bosia and Occult Crescent being way too hard. Some people complain about God, I don't even, dude, people complain about everything. Why am I even trying to do examples right now? People complain about things being hard all the time. People complain about normal mode trials being too hard. People complain about dungeons. People complain about the second boss, the most recent dungeon, being too hard. The one where you just get all pulled into your own jail. They're like, that's too much. Why are you doing that? I love Stray Burrow. First boss, one of the most hated bosses. So it's hard for me to be like, yeah, they should do that. That'd be cool. Because I'm okay with it. But me being okay with it, I've learned doesn't mesh all the time. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello. Hi. One question, one parting comment. Question, do you think there's a possibility of Final Fantasy overcorrecting the reasons to keep you logged in issue and end up it being more of a necessity than I would think most players want? No, I don't. I think the idea is that, okay, actually, let me give you a more elaborate answer. Because as I was saying that, I just thought of it. It's a question of how much you feel left out by not doing those higher difficulty activities that are attached to generally easier content. Example with Deep Dungeon coming up. Let's say you're someone who wants to do Deep Dungeon, you want to level your jobs, you maybe want to try climbing, but Quantum is something way out of the realm of your possibility. Now, let's say that Quantum has a title, we know that for a fact, but it also has Blessed Hordes. Now, Blessed Hordes you can get without doing Quantum, is the thing. You can get them from the challenge logs. But if you are someone who wants something out of the Blessed Hordes, and you only get those challenge log percent, and you have no interest, or you don't feel confident enough in doing quantum to get more of them, suddenly you start feeling left out, and that makes you maybe feel like the game is forcing you to log in more in order for you to take that extra step. So the question becomes, do you as an individual feel that necessary is because there are rewards you previously wouldn't have tried to attain, but now you feel like, well, they're adding these extra things, so I have to go do them? To me, that's not. If I just don't feel like getting a reward, I kind of just don't do it. Like, even if it's something I kind of want, I just decide not to, or I put it off for a really long time. Because I'm like, yeah, you know what? I do want that, but I'm just not going to do the time. It's whatever. Let the people who do want to do it have it. You know, I step away from it really easily, but some people don't. Now, some people would think necessary as if you don't do it, your character's behind. That's never going to happen. Final Fantasy XIV as a whole is very much a, you can barely play and at least make some progress. So the only things that really feel like gating that are like Savage, for example. And yeah, no, you'll never hit a point where it's like, I'd say like the worst time of WoW, like previous to warbands, where you could share, where you have to like make all these characters, and sometimes you even make multiple characters of the same class, trying to get the role that you want because you're not getting it on one character. So you feel like if you don't do a weekly or you don't do it daily, then you're just set by that. I don't see happening. It's just Final Fantasy XIV is just fundamentally not built for that, but they want to incentivize you to try things that you otherwise may not have considered trying. The way to fix summons is to give us 2 summons per phase. I'm not even kidding. You're not wrong. You're not even wrong. So I can't even fault you for that one. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Howdy. Howdy. Recently, I've gotten into playing 11 with the help of your videos. It's got me thinking about new player experiences in MMOs. Of the MMOs you played, do any stand out as having the best onboarding for new players? I know a lot of people complain about acclimating new players to 14, but man, is being a new 11 player chaotic. I think every MMO has some problems. Some do it better, some do it worse. Let's see. I'm trying to think. So I've played so many MMOs over the years. 14's biggest problem is that the story is really long, but the actual education system and the tutorials built in are really high quality. WoW's used to be really bad. And I'd say now the worst thing is because of the levels being condensed and you kind of just picking and choosing where to go while you're leveling up. If you were brand new without any guidance, they do give you some things, but the information that you'll get from fellow players versus the information you get from the game is largely conflicting. So I think that's a problem. Guild Wars 2 is kind of a chill onboarding experience because while there's a lot for you to know and figure out, if you are someone who is easily distracted by lots of objectives on a map, you kind of forget that you're new because none of the objectives are particularly difficult to understand or hard to like wrap your mind around. You're just like, oh, that's a vantage point, so I gotta climb someplace high. Oh, that's just a point of interest. I just need to go there and like physically see the thing. Only maybe a couple locations are like underground and like caves that are a little hard to find. That's like kind of the end of it. I'd say that the tougher thing in Guild Wars 2 is the combat. Understanding like what the advantages of each weapon are without someone else telling you what to do can be a little daunting, but early on it doesn't matter really too much. Yeah, Guild Wars 2 I think is one of the better ones, but that's tough. And then the older MMOs are all rough, like RuneScape, Final Fantasy XI, EverQuest, like all. As soon as you go back to the old days, the onboarding experience just gets infinitely worse. So you really have to look at modern games. Rift was a little rough. There's a lot of systems pretty early on, and the skill tree can be really daunting. That's the crazy thing is like 14 has a rough early game experience, but it's also like kind of really well done at the same time. It's really awkward. I'm actually playing Blue Protocol, which is actually existing right now, during its closed beta, and their early game experience is actually really good. Chinese MMOs do this thing where right when an MMO launches, it time gates you. Now, not when you make your character, but when the game launches. And so you kind of get to an end point in the story in a day, and then it points you to all of the things that it needs to explain. But that only works on launch. So when you're brand new without that, you could theoretically just go through the whole story and miss a whole bunch of features because you weren't looking at your quest log, and then it becomes a problem. So it's like, it's so weird. It's like there's always something that makes MMOs do not have a great time onboarding new people. It's why the genres generally struggle. That's why new MMOs struggle. And it's why guides just are so prevalent. They're just so needed. Like there's just always so many systems. So 14's up there. I hate to say it, but Guild Wars 2 for me is also up there. All right, I'm taking a really long time with all the answers this week, so I should probably get moving. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi. Hope you're doing well. When it comes to expansions, introducing new moves for jobs, I feel like the newer jobs like Reaper, Sage, Picton, and Viper don't have anywhere to go in terms of new things. Yeah, I've said that a lot too. I feel the same way. They're kind of built complete, which means when they get upgrades, they're very uninspired or uninteresting. It's very doubtful what Reaper can get in Dawn Trail, but was positively surprised with Perfectio and the Gluttony follow-ups. I personally don't see anywhere for the jobs to go. Yeah, like that's a huge problem. Of course, like Black Mage doesn't really have much they can do either. Like what, Fire 5? What is your opinion on newer jobs already feeling complete? On one hand, it's so great to get a new job. You're 20 levels from max. You have most of your kit. But when you are fully, like, the process from not complete to complete is actually so short that's kind of satisfying. The problem is every expansion after that, how do you duplicate that? I don't think they've ever done a good job. So yeah, it's tough. I don't really know. I don't really have much in the way of feedback impact that they can really do anything, because just fundamentally the way the game is designed, it does not leave a lot of room for that feeling without reworking things. And I think they maybe just need to be a little bolder with every job in each expansion. Be okay with changing something a little more, even if another thing is like people are like, oh, they used to do this, and then people are like, no, you just ruined my favorite job again. Now it's a completely different job. And so like, well, we probably shouldn't make it a completely different job every single time then. So let's not do that. And then you get just add a follow-up or make this direct crit or make you able to do it twice. You know, it just becomes harder because they want to preserve the playstyle that people already like, but they want you to have something flashy and cool and new and engaging. And those two fundamental ideas are just tough without actually expanding what your gameplay means to you. And a lot of players are afraid to have their gameplay expanded because they're just so comfortable, or they just don't care in the first place. They just want to look cool. So, I don't know what the solution is. It's one of those MMO problems that you can armchair dev down to, the last day you're alive, and you really don't get anywhere at the end of it because there's a problem with every solution. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, Happy. Hi. How's Blue Protocol so far? Worth playing? It's been really good. I was really nervous as I was playing it the first day. I started seeing, like I mentioned, those time gates. I started saying like, oh, I can do this daily, I can do that. But then I started to actually understand the game systems a little bit better. And it's a lot of rewarding you if you only want to play for short game sessions, but making sure you can absolutely still progress your character strength if you do want to play for longer game sessions. Bossing and getting the minor rewards and using those for reforged stones while you don't have the ability to actually use boss keys to get the full loot table. Open world monster hunting achievements with its own Monster Hunter journal that has its own rewards built on top of that. The fact that you can play every class on one character and you don't need to level the individual classes. They just match your account level. So you can actually switch and try different things. You can take the time to gear all of those things a lot more easily. And you can even get gear for those things while doing the grinds that you're doing elsewhere. The fact that it has that kind of absolutely feel okay playing for a short time, but if you really want to go hard, there's a lot of grinding you can absolutely do that's not 100% necessary. Works out really well. It's also got some other systems. There's definitely things I'm concerned about. There's a paid gacha for cosmetics only, but I don't know how those cosmetics interact. I don't know if you can I saw cosmetics on the player market being purchased for Luno. But if you purchase it with Luno, does that not mean you can then buy the unpaid gems with Luno? I didn't fully understand how the system, so I don't want to definitively comment on that. But the unpaid gems are used for a system that is entirely not needed. It's like a gacha to create these imagines, which are these extra buttons that summon monsters or characters from the game to do special effects, and they're really important for your build. But you can farm everything you need for imagines, or you can use your spare unpaid currency, strictly the unpaid currency that doesn't let you use the paid currency, in order to gacha to try to get more of the materials, which most of the time you just get materials. Sometimes you actually get the core thing that you need to craft instead, and that's its own thing. So the fact that there doesn't really seem to be pay for power, there's no stats on cosmetics, which was a problem of the original Blue Protocol that Bandai canceled when it was out in Japan. This version doesn't do that. But the thing is that there's so many question marks still about how these systems play out in the long term. And I don't know the exact feedback. I heard really good things about the game in China, but there's pretty mixed feedback. Apparently a lot of the English player base actually really liked it. The people who are playing like similar to how like I was playing 14 mobile, even though it's only out in China, those people seem to really love it. But Chinese players are a bit more divided about things they like and don't like. So there's question marks. And I think that it's free to play. There's no power associated for the most part with spending real money, so you can get in pretty low investment. As in $0. And since I don't care about cosmetics, it's great for me because it means I can just play the game and I'm not paying to like gain extra like stamina to progress and stuff. Like you basically just want to, level up guilds and, get the stamina resets that way and stuff like that. But it's like an action RPG. Honestly, a lot of people are saying it's like Genshin if it was an actual MMO. It's not entirely wrong. But it also doesn't quite feel that way. It's got elements of 14. It's got elements of Genshin, but it's not a character gacha. You make your character, play every class on one character. There's a lot of good, but a lot of good is actually something that East Asian MMOs usually present really well, really early. So many Korean MMOs I've played over the years seem like they're the greatest thing ever for the first early experience. And then you dig deeper. And I haven't dug deeper yet. So, well, this is a Chinese MMO. Has to be. I have to dig deeper. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Haps. Hi. Hope you're having a great day. I am. Thank you. What were your thoughts on the new EX trial? I thought it was okay. It wasn't the strongest one in the expansion, but I liked it. For me, the mechanics were fine, but the solo ads part really make me suffer on day 3. Yeah, I always recommend just saving some cooldowns there. It's not really that big of a deal. Ads can start casting a rage at absolutely any time after the first lasers. So here's the thing. I have not been back in there since day 1, just because I've had so many other things that I've been trying to play, and I was really focused on getting my Yan, which I did. And so I never really got to take the time to test the AI. It seemed like it was either that they like start casting it under a certain amount of health when they're not casting a spell, or when one of them dies. It's definitely not random. There's a condition that's triggered, but because I murder them almost immediately, I never had to deal with it. So I don't have a bad experience with it. I just save some resources for it and just blast them. But I did like it. I like seeing ideas like that where it pulls people in and makes them do things. It makes them really... the big cheese strat there is really, really funny to me. So I definitely... I definitely find that one entertaining. But all the same, I liked it. Just not my favorite in the whole expansion. We have some really strong contenders for trials this expansion, so I'm not surprised it's not my favorite. All right, looks like we actually have a lot of questions, or at the very least, I'd see like 3 or 4 of them like lined up. So let's just lightning round the rest of them. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hello. Could you use your direct phone line, the OCP, and tell me it'd be really cool to get Ilnark's floating platform as a mount? It is a mount in Final Fantasy XI, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it in 14. Hello, I wanted to ask if you've given Red Mage a shot. No, Red Mage has just never been my job. I just don't like it. I love the idea of it, and I actually think that in my head, like what it is makes a lot of sense to me. Like, oh, dual casting with the instant cast. Oh, that's the Red Mage. Oh, being both melee and magic with a healing spell, support tools. That's Red Mage. But when I play it, it doesn't click. Like it never has. So my opinion on Red Mage is so, I'm not going to say invalid. It's not valuable. Because it's not coming from a place of enjoyment in the first place versus people that do enjoy it and have more nuanced critique. So I don't feel responsible just saying, for me, it's regardless of how it is in Dawn Trail, I just don't like it. And even now, like, I know they've made changes to it. I still don't like it. Like it just, I don't vibe with it. Everyone has that job they just don't vibe with. And for me, it's Red Mage. Hello. I know it's probably not a good idea or something that would work, but I think they introduced a currency that you could earn in-game and spend on cash shop items. Yeah, that's definitely not a good idea. That works in Guild Wars 2 because it's not a subscription MMO. That would not fly if they were a subscription MMO. And so I don't think that's going to be a thing. It's also then fueled by, the main thing obviously is that obviously you can just sell those items effectively. You can effectively exchange gems for the in-game currency for Guild Wars 2 for gold. And that obviously, it presents its own problems. And 14's economy is already so bad that I don't think that's a good idea. And And then there is, okay, hey, Mr. Happy. Yeah, there's still, I see 3 more. Good thing I'm doing this. Also, Colorblind having trouble distinguishing the elements apart from the 3rd boss in the new Alliance raid. Yeah, I struggle with the same thing. I actually don't have great advice, even though I've done it a bunch. I do what I call educated guessing. I usually look for particles. So like wind and earth for me are hard to tell the difference for in that fight. And water and lightning are. I just hard focus on the particle effects and ignore the color. It's the only way I can do it. And even then, sometimes if I'm like rezzing a ton of people because I'm on healer, sometimes that falls apart because like I just don't remember what particle effect I saw. I just know I saw 1 of 2. Sometimes you can like look at the arrangement and go, okay, well, I know 2 of them. So if the 3rd one is 1 of the 2, then only this one. Like you can like deduce it. Plus, you can also look at the way other people are moving, and usually that's a good enough idea. But yeah, I don't have great advice for them other than that. Lolly Ho, I have a short question regarding the meaningful rewards. To be more meaningful if unsync doesn't exist, if difficulty is kept. No. I think that it's great when people come into the game later and a piece of content that is not meant to be hyper challenging, but was at the time a higher end piece of content is made available. Like I think chaotic should allow unsynced. It shouldn't be item level synced, and it just shouldn't be what it is. It should be treated like an extreme trial. That's what they originally wanted it to be. It shouldn't be synced. It shouldn't be item level synced. The only thing I think that really needs to stay synced forever is ultimate. Deep dungeons, I think there's a lot of value in leaving them level synced, but they're not even really synced so much as they're designed for that level range. Like fundamentally, it'd be weird if it allowed you to keep leveling because it's like programmed to hard cap at the highest level. But like in terms of traditional content, Ultimate's the only one I think needs to be level synced for like the long term. Everything else doesn't make sense to me. And I don't think that it would help. Effectively, you would have people who can't do these things unsynced now and basically just go, well, then I guess I'll never do it. And now they can't go and like hunt for things that they otherwise may have spent time in game collecting. And looking at World of Warcraft, honestly, one of the main premier content things to do that isn't like the actual modern content is to collect old mounts and minions. And if you couldn't go back and solo things like, you know, the Lich King and whatever, that would suck to do that. Like it wouldn't make it better that you had to sync and do that stuff. It would be like people would just genuinely have less to do because they wouldn't really feel like doing it in that way. And then you also get to work on all sorts of weird little optimizations for doing things. So yeah, I don't think it would help. What makes PvP bad in 14? One of the big things is just the responsiveness of your actions. It's really easy for your actions to clip and not go off. So that's always been one of the biggest problems. And also sometimes people just the way that their movements register on the screen is just really odd. Mr. Happy Curious, where does your name come from? Spanish homework when I was a kid. Literally, it asked me to write Mr. Happy Monkey, Señor Feliz Mono, and I just thought that was the stupidest thing I've ever been asked to do on Spanish homework. But I needed a nickname for some like random alien shooter, like top-down alien shooter I was playing at a friend's house, and I just went and I was doing my Spanish homework there, and I said, oh, I don't know, Mr. Happy. That's it. It has origins, and I know how to say Mr. Happy Monkey because of it, but you know, that's all it is. It was finally able to clear M8S recently. Grats. Down free from PF made me think about what are the chances of Unreal Savage. I'm not going to say it's unlikely. I just don't think it's a priority. Again, kind of talking to some of the things earlier. If they're going to put effort into things that will help the game, Unreal Savage just doesn't seem like it pleases people like me, but it doesn't actually like, it's not something like that will have longer term beneficial effects for the game. It just feels like a one-off that's kind of cool, right? And I just don't think that that's a great idea. I know that you want to use like the gear you collected from Savage to do the Unreal Savage, but the whole point of Unreal is that it's generally not a gear gated thing, like, so that doesn't even apply to that. So, yeah, no, like I would do it, but that's why I actually like low item level. It's a pain doing all the inventory for low item level, but it's so much fun doing the low item level challenges. Not mid item level, low item level. What's the advent? Hey, hi. With the advent of new classes, I want to throw an idea. I don't know if it would work in 14s, but a tanker DPS that focuses on autos. I'm not going to say that doesn't work, but you have to develop an entire system around what your auto attacks achieve. Like, does auto attacking grant you your gauge, and every 4 auto attacks you're able to, You're given some resource, or do you have a proc that strictly is off auto attacks? It can't be so simple as you just do a bunch of auto attacks. You need to have something that interacts with those auto attacks and feels engaging. But I do think I will say this, auto attacks, if I'm not mistaken, have a slightly smaller range. And I think that maybe this would work if you were a ranged job of some kind. Like, for example, let's say that you do like a dual crossbow situation. And every few auto attacks with your dual crossbows, you can fire a giant crossbow bolt at the opponent. Now all of a sudden your auto attacks actually mean something, so you can introduce abilities. Your next auto attack, similar to barrage hitting 3 times. Barrage used to make your autos hit 3 times. Suddenly you get an attack where it's like every one of your auto attacks will hit 3 times, and now you can basically go auto, big bolt. You have to come up with systems like that to make it work, where the auto attacks are a core integral part that do interact with your active skills. So if they can do that, I won't say it can't happen, but I don't think they're going to think auto attacking is a fun enough mechanic to base an entire job around it. I mean, the wind mechanic for Monk was not a very Riddle of Wind when it's just like auto attacking real fast. I think it's kind of cool because it's very 100-fisty, which is a very Monk thing. But it's fundamentally doesn't really feel good. It doesn't interact with anything. So it needs to be more interesting than that. Heyo, Mr. Happy. Hi. Keep seeing Savage in the PF asking for taxis. Taxis is... So, when Savage is not... I'm sorry. Let me start over. When Savage is weekly capped, you need to clear each fight sequentially in order to queue into the next one as the party leader. So, if you haven't done M5 for the week and you're the one responsible for queuing a group in, then you can only queue into M5. But if somebody who has already cleared I'm sorry, not even has cleared, that would be terrible. If somebody who is on a fight, so let's say somebody is cleared 5, 6, and 7, and they're on 8 for the week. They haven't cleared it, but they're on it for the week. Actually, wait a minute. No, I'm being dumb. This would have worked perfectly fine the way I was saying it the first time. Effectively, it's somebody queuing you in to force you to skip needing to clear all the previous fights. People do this so that they don't need to, like, oh, we just want to clear 8 for the week. We don't want to do 5, 6, and 7. That's a waste of time. So they'll ask someone to taxi them to 8. Somebody will come in, invite them to a party, queue into M8 with them. That'll give them the checkpoint because now they'll have like been ruled out of loot for 5, 6, and 7 because they went to 8. So it just gives them the cleared status so they can't go back and get anything from those. And now they can just queue into 8 directly. That's the point of taxing. Which expansion is your overall balance of gameplay for 14? Stormblood's best expansion. Hands down. It's just the best expansion we ever had. I don't want to hear anyone say otherwise. So another person using that dash, by the way. Hello, your SteelSeries reminder had me thinking. I've been looking for new headphones and a standalone microphone. I've been having a hard time finding headphones by SteelSeries that don't have a built-in mic. But I want to keep using the SteelSeries audio software. Do you know that SteelSeries GG audio software is compatible with non-SteelSeries projects? Yes, it is. SteelSeries GG audio software is compatible with non-SteelSeries products. They do also have the Alias Pro. I haven't, as many of you have heard, since moving, I haven't messed around with my new one. I've had some like really bad peaking, and even when I try to fix it, sometimes it just goes the other way. Sometimes it sounds better or worse depending on if it's an OBS or if it's recorded directly into Vegas. I've had all sorts of ups and downs, but that's generally something I've always struggled with, this audio, not specific to this mic. But they do have the Alias and the Alias Pro if you're looking for a standalone microphone as well. But yes, SteelSeries GG does work with non-SteelSeries products. Jesus. Oh my God, there's still so many questions. Ever since the end of Raid Tier 7.0, I've seen a lot more in-game negative comments surrounding the Hector guides. Yeah, I mean, this happened to me. Like, I had a lot of people who loved my guides, and then, people hated the guide. Like, it happens. You live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I think creators like you and Hector are amazing for the community. I think the problem is there's a lot of people who use the guides and don't actually know how to play Final Fantasy XIV. This was a problem with my guides. Because my guides, all I ever tried to do with my guides is whatever strategy my group beat it with, I did that for the guide. Because it was something that we figured out together, that I was a part of, so I wouldn't be just like ripping the normal strats out and putting them in. And people didn't like that because a day one strat from someone who's usually like super geared is not going to be the most ideal strat. It's good enough to get you the clear. And honestly, if you're a good enough player, you might see that and be like, oh, that makes sense, but wouldn't it be easier to do it this way? And then you do it that way and you're like, oh, but that helped me figure it out because I at least understood it. I always want guides to be something that lets people know how the fight goes and how we approached it, but not to stop the thinking process there and just like a robot, just try to copy it, beep, boop, beep. I would like people to keep thinking after that and do better than that. But most people don't. They just want to go exactly where the guide says to go and move on with their lives. So that's one reason. The other thing is that Hector doesn't clear the fights. He just fundamentally understands how Final Fantasy XIV works and is an educator. So some people take a lot of issue with that as well. So there's a number of reasons why, but it's just a mix of people who don't fundamentally understand Final Fantasy XIV using guides and not being able to play properly or even do them properly. Also, sometimes the Hector guides have multiple strats, and that's people just aren't capable. They're just they pick one thing and they stick to it. And when you have 2 or 3 things and everyone's referencing the same guide, but there's 2 or 3 different strats, but the PF doesn't say which strat it actually is. You see what the problem is? If fundamentally, if everyone understands that, oh, which of this strat are we doing from the guide, and you go strat 1, they should go, oh, okay. But they don't. They just go like, I don't know that one. I only like doing strat 2. Can we do strat 2? Wipes once doing strat 1. We should really do strat 2. So it's a mix of a lot of it's user error. When it comes to guides, a lot of it's user error. That causes a lot of strain. Because then other people be like, oh, it's this guy's fault. It's like, no, it's the person playing the game. I saw you stream Guild Wars 2. Just wondering if you plan to try high-end rating. I would like to, but it's not my immediate thought. Maybe in Visions, but I've done Fractals before. That's about it. But I need to figure out what I'm going to play in Visions. I'm thinking Paragon, Troubadour, or Amalgam, but I don't know for certain yet. And then, what takes longer, OSRS 1 to 99 or 1 to max master level 11? You know the answer to that question. My initial gut reaction was 11. Oh, yeah. By a lot. Oh, yeah. And then you adjust the question, okay, how many 99s for 1 max master level? It depends on which 99s in OSRS. I could have done fire making in like 6 days if I just sat at my phone and did nothing else. I cannot do that with master levels. Not a shot in hell. So... And then I don't know, like fletching. How long does fletching take? Fishing doesn't seem so bad. Yeah, there's some skills that don't really seem to take that long. So it depends on which ones. So it's tough. And then the very last question, do you think the near raids need any more reworking and then maybe reducing the HP? No. I think that I think bumping the rewards was fine. I still don't feel good doing them, but at least the reward bump kind of justifies it a bit more. But no, I think just HP. If I was going to change anything about the near raids, it would still just be lower their HP. They were mostly, like, I didn't like that we were losing a 24-man in Shadowbringers to near. I didn't think it was worth it in any capacity, especially because it has nothing to do with advancing our story's game, like our game's lore and everything. But it was like on content. Most of the bosses were like mildly okay. Some of them, Puppet's Bunker was actually, I've said in recent years, I think Puppet's Bunker was actually good. It was really good. There's some really interesting bosses, some great music. But no, like it just after the level sync, after the reworking of all the stats and everything, yeah, no, it wasn't great. the number crunch and all that. So yeah, it would just be HP. But that's going to be a wrap for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. It is a long one. And I can't say next week's won't be a long one either. Like I said, there might be some shit in the next one. We'll see. It's going to depend largely, but you know, we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, that is going to be a wrap for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. If Magic Spoon sponsored this video, thanks. If they didn't, thanks anyway. I don't know. Thank you again to anyone supporting on Patreon, and be sure to ask your questions in the comment section of the video below. But with that, I will see all of you in the next one. Until then, take care.